All right, so here we are on the campus of the illustrious North Carolina A&T University, one of the most prestigious historically black colleges in the cosmos.
Mm.
And so, tell us who you are, what you do. Give us some of your credentials.
My name is Bryan D. Turman. I teach in the English department at North Carolina A&T State University. My area is black popular culture, specifically hip hop music and culture. And I design two different hip hop classes, English 209 and English 316. And I deliver them in the English department. And that's what I do. I talk about hip hop through an academic lens. And for me, black spaces are generally the last spaces in academics that get around to talking about black stuff through a black lens. And for me, hip hop is an expression of black and brown culture, and ain't no better place to talk about that than in black spaces. So that's what we do.
So tell us, how did you become a professor of hip hop? What inspired you? What was the road like to get here?
My academic degrees are in English and African American literature, and so I approach hip hop by a narrative approach, right? So I look at hip hop as an aspect of black storytelling. For me, it's no different from the Harlem Renaissance or the Black Arts Movement or slave narratives or what we were doing in Africa in terms of the griot and telling stories that were symbolic and figurative set to a drum beat, right? So all of that stuff encompasses what became hip hop music and culture. And so I access hip hop through its narrative lens. I'm looking at hip hop academically in terms of the storytelling aspect of it and how important it is for those stories of disenfranchised folk to be told through their own voice in their own manner. And I think hip hop is one of the best vehicles to express African American triumphs, trials, and tribulations here in America and all around the world. I think hip hop is now a global phenomenon, and regardless of where you go in the world, marginalized people have used hip hop to express what they're feeling about in their society. Good, bad, and indifferent.
Indeed. So in my opinion, I feel like your class is one of the most important classes in college.
Please.
Because if you're learning about the history of hip hop, you're learning about not only history, you're learning about music, literature, philosophy, technology, so sort of expand on that, about the broad range of what you learn when you learning about hip hop.
That's exactly right. And my approach to hip hop is the macro. I always tell students, it's real easy for us on the micro to look at individual artists or individual movements and say this person is this, that, and the third. But hip hop, like all other art forms, didn't come out of a vacuum. The politics, the social aspects, the artistic aspects, the technology, the laws, the whatever it is that's going around, food even. We could talk about hip hop through any lens because hip hop is culture. And for us, it encompasses all of that stuff. I can't talk about hip hop in the 80s without talking about Reaganomics, without talking about crack cocaine, without talking about crime and unemployment and lifestyles of the rich and famous, and how all these things surrounding hip hop fed into the type of hip hop that we got out of it. I know for me as a black college graduate, I graduated from North Carolina A&T State University in '94. I'm probably not at a black college if it's not for a different world, for television shows and for rappers at the time wearing African medallions and black college sweatshirts and t-shirts, and just how the fashion, the style, the knowledge, all this stuff came into what is hip hop for me. I remember, because I've been a hip hop head for so long, I knew that there were 5 boroughs in New York way before I ever stepped foot in the city myself. I knew about aspects of California or Washington State. Even something like Baby Got Back by Sir Mix-a-Lot. I remember this dude from Seattle. What the hell is Seattle? Then learning about Seattle, Washington. Same thing with Miami, if it's not for Uncle Luke or if it's not for Master P, and learning about New Orleans, or 8 Ball and MJG teaching me about Memphis, Tennessee, and Common in Chicago. I could go on and on about just how hip hop has expanded my knowledge base in terms of the black community, not just being what I thought it was growing up and being born and bred in North Carolina. I know about aspects of Africa and Southeast Asia and Europe, South America. through the lens of hip hop. So you're correct. Can't talk about hip hop without talking about the politics, sports, entertainment, philosophy, technology. Hip hop is the most technological musical platform ever. And although we can talk about rock and roll and electric guitar, if it's not for sampling technology, if it's not for being able to use the music studio, and how hip hop engineers went from being DJs to producers, and understanding the texture of the music and what could come out based on how you worked microphones, what it sounded in the speaker, amplification and equalizers, and all this stuff what cats were doing in the park jam to produce sound translated to what they did in the music studio. Understanding just how all this stuff came together. I could talk about TV shows like Sanford and Son and Good Times and Cosby Show and A Different World, and just how hip hop has encompassed for me all of that stuff. The references in hip hop. Baraka, as a poet, said that one of the things we got to do in terms of black folk is we got to create standards of our own art that deal with our own local culture references and our own understanding of who we are as people. And for me, hip hop is the number one vehicle and has been since particularly the late 70s in terms of commercial music, and even before, if we talk about Herc and what he was doing at the block parties and the tennis court discos and the backyard jams and the park jams, and just how hip hop has been this vehicle for a very long time for disenfranchised folk. If you're poor, I think now you're looking at the LGBTQI community and what they're doing with hip hop, how they're using hip hop as a vehicle to talk about and express themselves. We can talk about female issues and misogyny and sexism through the lens of hip hop. So although we get a lot of stuff, hip hop gets blamed for drug culture or gang violence or gun violence. Well, these things exist in the greater society. Hip hop, like all art, reflects, it doesn't create. If these things weren't going on in the streets in real life, we wouldn't hear them in hip hop. Oftentimes I think hip hop gets blamed for societal ills that existed way before hip hop uttered its first. Like, you can't blame the selling of narcotics in our street on Jeezy's Snowman movement. Frank Lucas and Bumpy Johnson and them were selling heroin in New York way before there was a rap. So drug game is not hip hop's fault. I think hip hop gets blamed for stuff because it's primarily people by young black men who are oftentimes from the hood, and it's easy to blame stuff on disenfranchised groups, particularly if you don't want to talk about the real issue. And for me, hip hop has been a vehicle to do that.
Okay, that even I was gonna say even dance. You know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely,
cats started dancing in a whole different way, dancing on their heads, transforming the way people dance as well. But so yeah, I mean, you sort of was getting into it. But what brings us here today is it is the 50th anniversary of hip hop that we're celebrating this year. So please give us a synopsis of where hip hop has come these 50 years. You know, where it's come from, and you know what it envelops, and yeah, just give us a synopsis of this 50th anniversary of hip hop and what it means.
Man, it blows my mind, Jay. I mean, on some real stuff, man. Like, to think about where hip hop is now, particularly from a young cat in Statesville, North Carolina, and having access to the culture, man, primarily because cats back then, parents would send them up to New York or something for the summer to go live with some uncle. They would bring a cassette tape back to the hood. We make copies of that thing, pass it around, and to now have hip hop being dominating popular airways. Like, you can't watch a movie nowadays, even if there's no black people in it, without hip hop as part of the soundtrack. Commercials and TV shows, and to see where the culture has gone and the music and the art has gone from its inception in the early 70s, regardless of how you feel about DJ Kool Herc and August 11th, 1973, which is the date that most scholars use to date hip hop in the Bronx, New York, to now. I never would have thought I oftentimes think about the Biggie line, remember rapping Duke to hard, never thought that hip hop would make it this far. I never thought that I would have a class at a 4-year university that talks about hip hop. But then I started learning that there's always been classes about hip hop, and the classes were either in the street, performances. We talked about dance and black music go hand in hand. We had the Charleston and Lindy Hop, the bus stop connected to rock and roll and R&B. You got breakdancing connected to hip hop. The fact that in Paris next year, you're gonna have breakdancing as an event in the Olympics. The idea that some brother, sister, or person is gonna be running around here with same gold medal that Usain Bolt got behind breakdancing. amazing to me. Look at where graffiti art has gone. From street, considered vandalism, to hanging in museums. There's a whole street art museum in New York City right now. And graffiti has been used on clothes and t-shirts and in museums and galleries and all around the world. Basquiat is the highest selling American artist of all time. Starts out as a graffiti writer. That Banksy over in Europe is getting down, doing all kind of social commentary with his graffiti, and considered a frontline artist. Cause or Mark Echo, and how every aspect of hip hop, from the DJ to the MC to the graph writer to the break dancer, how all that stuff has touched American and global popular culture. And it all started in the Bronx sometime in the early 70s and spread all over the world. And for me, I always say it's just been 50 years. Like 50 years, if I can live long enough to be 150 years old, I can't imagine where hip hop would then be. And the type of things that hip hop would touch. We got folk like Cory Booker, who was mayor of Newark, New Jersey, that is now a sitting U.S. senator. And you might catch him with some shell toes on and the Yankee fitted cap. The fact that hip hop has entered in these spaces. We got Reverend Yearwood, who has a whole caucus that's dictated to lobby for hip hop related issues in Congress. Hip hop is everywhere. You look at black athletes and athletes of all walks of life, and how hip hop, you see somebody going into a game, they got headphones on, and I'm pretty sure they're not listening to Miles Davis or John Coltrane, no disrespect to the jazz era, but it's hip hop that's in those headphones. And you look at movie and TV show soundtracks and how hip hop has been infused in all this stuff. It's just amazing to me that hip hop has gone everywhere. Now, I don't think there's a part of the world right now. You can go to Russia, you can go to Spain or Egypt or France or Brazil or Argentina or Korea or Japan or China. There's nowhere you can go in this world now and not find hip hop. The fact that the cat that's considered the most important hip hop artist right now, Drake, is from Canada. Never would have thought that when I was a 15, 16-year-old, first just getting involved in the culture as a listener. Never would have thought that hip hop would go all the places that it's gone. And it's just amazing. You got hip hop cops now. Used to be when we talked about hip hop cops, they were cops that were arresting officers. Now you got real police officers that listen to hip hop as their number one musical genre. Hip hop is everywhere. And in fact, I'm teaching hip hop in the college classroom at the illustrious North Carolina A&T State University. It's amazing, but I'm not by myself. There's hip hop classes at most of the Ivy League schools: Brown, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, University of Pennsylvania, MIT even. All these schools got hip hop related programs. It's just amazing, man. And I think it's a testament to just how important Black and brown people have been to America and the world, and how through hip hop we finally getting a little bit of our just due.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent. I love it, man. You know, I was watching Nas documentary, but yeah, I saw that they were studying Nas's lyrics.
At Harvard.
Yeah,
they got a whole Nasir Jones Fellowship. At Harvard.
It's amazing.
I mean, it's bananas.
Yeah, but I've always thought that hip hop was like the new Shakespeare.
Yes.
I feel like those lyrics should be studied, because I feel like we through hip hop we've taken the language to a whole nother level.
Man, I mean, if you just think about like American English or English in general, how bland it would be without us.
Right.
And the fact that you can open up Webster's dictionary right now and look up bling, and it'll say to adorn oneself with fine and expensive jewelry. We're in Webster's dictionary. Just amazing, man. I don't think there's any aspect of American life and perhaps even global popular culture that hadn't been touched in one way or the other through hip hop. And so it's just a dynamic art form that for those of us that live the culture, that love the culture, it's not just the music. It's the dance, it's the imagery, it's the dress. Think about fashion and how bland fashion would be without the infusion of what they used to call street fashion. Now hip hop has taken that. The hoodie used to be just for athletes. Now hip hop has turned it into a very important garment that even if you never played a sport, you probably got a hoodie. Sneakers, the Timberland boot. I remember we used to call them construction Tims because they're made for construction workers. Now you say Butters, even to somebody that ain't never had a pair of Tims, they know that you're talking about Timberland boots. It's just amazing, man, just how how hip hop has infused itself in every aspect of popular culture, not just in America, but around the world.
Absolutely. I was watching something that you posted, man. It was, you had made a statement. I'm pretty sure I gave you a 100 or some fire emoji or something. But you were saying how a lot of the times the art that we create, we don't really see the value of it like the other.
Yes.
The dominant culture sees the value of it. So it's sort of like, a lot of things that we create, the dominant society sort of takes it and makes it, they're like,
Yeah, they see the beauty in it. They see the importance in it before we do. And I think that comes down to, when you're doing something, you don't oftentimes recognize the importance of what you're doing, particularly if what you're doing comes natural. I mean, I think black folk, man, we've been telling jokes. We've been saying things that are rhythmic and symbolic and figurative. We've been dancing, we've been making visual art. We've been doing this for eons. Like, you can't think about the Egyptians without thinking about hieroglyphics. And I think it's gonna come a point where you can't think about black Americans without thinking about hip hop. Because of what we've done, what we've used hip hop for. And if you look at food, for example, I'm from the South. The way my mama cooked, the way my grandma cooked, that was just the way they cooked. Now somebody call it Southern cuisine. Oh, it's special now. For us, it was just cooking. I think the same thing with hip hop. We're generally the last people to look at our own creative processes as necessary, important, and influential. Other folk, though, tend to look at that a lot. If you look at hip hop, first hip hop class was at Harvard University in 1986. Just 7 years after the release of Rapper's Life, when hip hop was considered a fad by most major music outlets, when there was very little hip hop radio outside of LA and New York, other folk were looking at hip hop as something that was significant, something that was important. And I think that's what happens to black and brown people a lot, and poor people. So the fact that hip hop came out of poor people, black and brown folk in the Bronx, New York, for a lot of people, they looked at it as that ain't really important. Now here we are 50 years later, and every award show has had some moment where they talked about the importance of hip hop and the 50th anniversary or birthday, or however you want to call it. And I think that that's a testament to just how important our creative processes are. It also says a lot that we don't necessarily see the importance of it until after somebody else has shed light on it. And we don't understand the artistry, the skill, the mastery that goes into creating that art, because we think oftentimes, because I know somebody that can do it, then anybody can do it. And if you've ever tried to get on the microphone and spit a hot 16, it's not easy to do. It takes skill, it takes presence, it takes mastery. If you ever try to create a graffiti image, it's not just buying some spray paint and going on the wall and putting some stuff up there. If you try to break dance, doing a windmill is not as easy as it looks when break dancers do it. Same thing with DJing. You can't just go buy records and a turntable and become a DJ. It takes practice, it takes skill. And I know cats that are full-time DJs, they spend a whole lot of their time just working on records, working on sound, trying to understand how to blend this record and that record. Same thing with folk that are MC. You don't just wake up one morning and say, I'm an MC. No, it takes work, it takes effort, it takes skill. In the same way, it takes Branford Marsalis a whole lot of part of his life to learn how to play an instrument. It takes MCs a whole lot of effort to learn how to rock a crowd, learn how to rock a mic. And just because somebody got a record on the radio, don't make him an MC. MC means microphone controller, master of ceremony. You got to be a master at what you're doing. And just like the old Kung Fu flicks I used to watch growing up, there's different chambers. You can have one style, master that style. There's always another style that you can try to master, or you can just be a master of that one style. I think far too often people look at hip hop and look at the style that they like as that's it. But there's always other things. And just because you don't like it doesn't mean that there's not some energy, effort, and intentionality that's put into it to make this person a master of their craft. And so, yeah, man, I think hip hop has grown and blossomed, and sometimes disappointed, and sometimes maybe happy. Art is, they always say, Plato said a long time ago, art is about the beholder. Beauty is always in the eye of the beholder. And I think sometimes people look at aspects of hip hop because they don't like it, they think it shouldn't be liked at all. Well, I don't have to love Sexy Red to understand that there's some value in people liking whatever it is that she does. I feel the same way if I say Nas is the greatest lyricist of all time and you say it's Jay-Z. That's just a matter of opinion. It's about what we like, what you like versus what I like.
Black Thought.
Black Thought. Same thing, man. Black, I think, is one of those underrated cats. And because he never had a quote-unquote big record, that somehow people forget. He's not a masterfully skilled MC who can still do that thing live, no matter where he is. I think if you meet Black Thought on the sidewalk in Philadelphia, he can still spit. Things fall apart right there in your face. And I think that takes skill. And I think oftentimes because of what Black and brown and poor people do, we're just doing it. We oftentimes don't take the moment to sit back and reflect on just how important and influential this thing that we're doing is.
Okay, so things haven't always been, there's not just a beautiful side of 50 years of hip hop. There is also a detrimental side.
Absolutely.
To how we celebrating this 50 years of hip hop. You know, we lost a lot of great minds, you know, a lot of talented cats behind this. And I believe Knife Wonder had put out some statements that said at a certain point, it was like rap split. It was like you sort of had your Conscious, De La Soul's, Tribe Called Quest, and then you sort of went towards the Master P's and the gangster rap music and things like that. Can you talk about how hip hop has the negative aspects of hip hop?
Yeah, man. I think one of the things that I stay believing in is that hip hop is a many room mansion. There's a lot of rooms. There's a library in that mansion. There's the playroom in that mansion. There's a kitchen in that mansion. There's a living room and there's bedrooms and there's bathrooms. I think a lot of times people spend too much time in the bathroom. I don't necessarily blame that on hip hop. I think that in America and in popular culture in America, oftentimes the things that are the most outlandish, that are the most wild, those things get a lot of spotlight on. Things that might feed you, might be influential, might lead you to a higher plane in terms of thinking or life, those things are generally pushed to the side.
So, but let's talk about that. So, do we control that? I guess what I'm trying to say is, it seems like we're not in control of the culture. You know what I'm saying? Like, really, I guess I could say white people control what's pushed out and popularized.
Yeah. I think, man, that's like you said, the good and bad, the yin and the yang. The fact that hip hop became a product once you commercialize hip hop. I tell students all the time, the music industry been around a long time. The same shit they did to Ray Charles or the Temptations in terms of whack contracts, in terms of the system taking their artistry, turning it into a product and then selling it to folk and then dictating to them the types of things that are gonna be promoted. That's absolutely happening in hip hop. I try to distinguish hip hop culture from rap music. Rap music, to me, that's the commercial thing. If you listen to commercial radio, you're gonna hear rap music. Lucky enough, nowadays, there are a whole bunch of outlets that you can get hip hop culture from. And the culture is still controlled by the people. Now, what you hear on commercial radio, that's controlled by primarily white-owned record labels and those entities whose job is to make money. I'm not somebody that believes these white business interests are out to destroy the black community. I always say they have to make money. And if they can make money destroying the black community, maybe that's a win-win. I don't know. But those record labels ain't finna go broke trying to destroy the black community. If the thing will sell, then they'll pump that thing. And because of American capitalism, like, we got Wendy's because of McDonald's. If McDonald's didn't become successful selling cheap food that wasn't healthy for you, there would be no Wendy's, no Burger King, no Sonic, no Popeyes, you can name the litany of fast food restaurants that sell food that's not nutritious, that's cheap, that's quick to make, but because you can make money doing that. I think the same thing happened with hip hop. That is, once hip hop became a product and you could buy it and sell it. It used to be, if you wanted to get on in hip hop, all you had to do was be good. So you could be Biggie, you could be big, black, and ugly as ever. Wasn't nobody worrying about whether or not you were marketable. Because you were good. That's what made you marketable. You could be Cool G Rap, and you could have a lisp, and you got a scar on your face, and you could still get on. Well, once the marketing folk got involved, once the business entities got involved, once these major labels start seeing hip hop as something, a product that can be bought and sold, then they got into marketing. And once you do that, you get into duplication. So that if nasty girl raps is what sells, then you're gonna get a bunch of nasty girl raps. If nasty girl raps ain't selling, you're not gonna get no nasty girl raps. Like there's a reason that I could go to the store and buy Midnight Marauders by Tribe Called Quest. I could go to the store, I could get a hold to Wu-Tang, I could get a hold to in commercial outlets. These musical platforms, the record labels never wanted KRS-One to be successful. They didn't care for that, I'm sure. But because folk like KRS-One and they bought KRS-One records, KRS-One became successful. Record labels are about making money. And if they can produce a product that's cheap, that a lot of people like, that makes them money, that's what they're gonna do. It doesn't matter. I don't think it really matters to them if it's conscious, if it's backpack, if it's gangster, if it's trap rap, if it's mumble rap, if it's sexual rap. I don't really think they care too much about that. All they care about is, does it make money for our shareholders? Folks forget that these record labels are owned by board. They have boards, they have shareholders. And they talking about return on investment. How much money do I put in versus how much money I get out? And if I put in money into Wu-Tang Clan, I get a lot of money off of Wu-Tang Clan, good, you'll get another dang 1,000 Wu-Tang Clans. If I put in money in Sexy Red, and I get out money in Sexy Red, then they're gonna get 1,000 Sexy Reds. That's just capitalism. So I don't think about hip hop as who controls it. I always say, if the audience would have bought Talib Kweli's last album, if 2 million people buy Talib Kweli's album, you're gonna get a bunch of Talib Kweli sounding rappers after that. But if 2 million people buy Blueface, then you're gonna get a bunch of Blueface style rappers. No disrespect to whatever style of rap somebody likes. What labels are about is making money. And whatever they can produce to make money, they're gonna do it. I once again don't think they finna go broke trying to destroy the black community. I don't think there's no record label worth its salt that would say, okay, we're just gonna put this music out and it's gonna kill the black community. But if nobody buys it, if you don't hear it, then it's gonna stop. But as long as foolishness is what sells or is what popular, if the bathroom is the only place people wanna be in, then record labels are capitalists. They just trying to make money. They're gonna reproduce bathroom rap. If library rap is what sells or is important and significant to the audience, then you're gonna get a bunch of library rap. And unfortunately, we got then turn the lens on ourselves and say, well, what are we doing? Why is it that Ice Spice or Sexy Red or whoever is super popular and Larry June or La Russell aren't? It's not that they don't all make music. It's that for whatever reason, the audience would rather hear Ski Yee than they want to hear Larry June's last joint, which came out Friday, which I think is some dope music. But I'm aware I'm never going to hear none of those records on the radio, which is why I don't listen to commercial radio.
Makes sense. Definitely makes sense, man. But yeah, I appreciate, everything that you do, bro. I appreciate your insight. I appreciate your knowledge. I appreciate just the way that you articulate it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can listen to it all day. So, that's pretty much it,
Hey, appreciate it, man. Look here, man, for y'all folk out there in TV land, man, or film land, or wherever the hell you at. Hey, man, this brother behind the camera, man, shouts out, man. I remember meeting this dude, man, years ago. And then somebody was like, man, this dude got a TV show, man. I was like, a TV show, man, what? Hey, the brother, man, has grinded out in ways that when I always say, man, what's a real testament to who you are as a person is what you're doing when ain't nobody looking. And I know that this brother, man, has been interested, involved, and a love of the culture when wasn't nobody looking. When it was just him just thinking about what he was doing, man, I like to see myself in that same vein, man. I don't do what I do because of anybody else, man. I do it because I'm a constituent member of hip hop music and culture. I believe in the culture, I'm a fan of the culture, and that doesn't mean that I don't recognize, as I know the brother Jay don't, recognizes there's some bad stuff in the culture as well. There's some things in hip hop that I would rather not have in hip hop, but it's not my choice. I understand that hip hop has been a reflection of this world, man, and I think hip hop has done a really good job of showing the good, bad, and the ugly in this world, here in America and elsewhere. I remember when I first heard NWA, I'm from the projects of Statesville, North Carolina, far removed from Compton. But when they said F the police, I understood what they meant. I didn't feel like I needed to be in Compton to understand what they meant. And I think that's one of the things when hip hop does it well, hip hop is universal. And regardless of where you are, white, black, green, and gold, rich or poor, once you hear really good hip hop, it reflects whatever we got going on in society. And I know, man, for the brother Jay, man, I really appreciate how he's been involved in giving an audience some understanding of the culture. So as much as he loves and appreciates what I do, man, I love and appreciate what he do as well. And I hope y'all do too, man. All right, peace.